Have you ever wondered what happens when you get a little too eager, a little too curious, and suddenly find yourself in over your head? Well, let's dive into a magical story that teaches us exactly that. This is the tale of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. In a tower filled with swirling potions, ancient books, and shimmering crystals, lived a powerful, wise old sorcerer. And with him, a young apprentice. This wasn't just any boy. He was bright, ambitious, and had a fire in his eyes. He dreamed of one day wielding the same incredible magic as his master. Every day, he watched in awe as the sorcerer commanded the stars, brewed bubbling elixirs, and spoke words that could shape reality itself. The apprentice was a quick learner, sweeping floors and grinding herbs, but his mind was always on the bigger picture. He wanted to cast spells, to feel that power for himself, and he wanted to impress the master who he so deeply admired. The sorcerer, however, was not just powerful. He was also wise. He saw the boy's ambition, but he also saw his impatience. One day, he sat the apprentice down. He pointed a long, bony finger at a heavy, leather-bound book locked with a golden clasp. "This book," he warned, his voice low and serious, "and all the magic in this workshop are not toys. You must never, ever use them without my permission. True magic requires discipline, patience, and a deep understanding of the consequences. Are we clear?" The apprentice nodded eagerly, but the warning only fanned the flames of his curiosity. From that day on, the boy became a secret observer. While pretending to dust shelves or polish vials, he would peek from the corner of his eye, watching his master's every move. He memorized the strange, melodic words of the spells. He watched the intricate hand gestures. The way the sorcerer drew symbols in the air that glowed with an otherworldly light. At night, he'd lie in his small bed, whispering the incantations to himself, dreaming of the day he could finally try them. He imagined himself commanding brooms to dance and mops to sing, proving to his master that he was ready. He just needed the perfect opportunity. And then, one morning, that opportunity arrived. The sorcerer came to him, dressed in his traveling cloak. "I must go on an important journey," he announced. "It may take several days. Your duty is to keep the workshop clean, feed the magical creatures in the menagerie, and, above all, remember my warning: do not touch the magic." With a final, stern look, the master was gone. The tower fell silent, and for the first time, the apprentice was completely alone. He had a long list of chores, but a mischievous idea was already bubbling up inside him, far more potent than any potion he'd ever helped brew. At first, the apprentice was diligent. He swept the stone floors, polished the astrolabes, and filled the great cauldron in the center of the room with fresh water from the well outside. It was backbreaking work. Bucket after bucket, he hauled the heavy water up the winding stairs, his arms aching and his brow slick with sweat. As he panted, his eyes fell upon a dusty old broom leaning against the wall. And then, he remembered the spell. The words his master had used to make inanimate objects come to life. The temptation was too strong to resist. "What's the harm in a little help?" he thought. "The master will never know, and the work will be done in half the time." Standing tall, he tried to mimic his master's commanding posture. He took a deep breath, pointed at the broom, and spoke the magical words he had practiced so many times in secret. For a moment, nothing happened. He felt a pang of disappointment. But then, the broom twitched. It shuddered, then slowly, it stood up on its own. The apprentice gasped with delight. It worked. He then commanded it to pick up the buckets, march down to the well, and fill the cauldron. The broom obeyed perfectly. It scurried off, its stiff bristles tapping a cheerful rhythm on the stone floor. The apprentice laughed, overjoyed with his success. He sat back in the master's grand chair, feeling like a true sorcerer as the enchanted broom did all his work for him. This was incredible. Magic was even better than he had imagined. The broom was relentless. It filled the cauldron, but it didn't stop. It brought another bucket, and the water began to slosh over the rim, creating a puddle on the floor. "All right, that's enough," the apprentice shouted. But the broom didn't listen. It just kept going, its movements becoming more frantic. The puddle grew into a pool, and the pool into a small lake that began to flood the workshop. Panic set in. The apprentice screamed, "Stop! I command you to stop." He tried different words, different gestures, but he only knew the spell to start the magic, not the one to end it. In a fit of desperation, he grabbed a heavy axe. If he couldn't stop it with magic, he'd stop it with force. He swung the axe with all his might and split the broomstick in two. For a second, he thought he'd won. But then, to his horror, both pieces of the broom sprang to life. Now, there were two enchanted brooms, each grabbing a bucket and moving twice as fast. He had just made the problem worse. The water level rose rapidly, sweeping books off shelves and knocking over potion bottles, creating a fizzing, colorful mess. The two brooms multiplied into 4, then 8, then an entire army of marching, water-carrying brooms. The workshop was turning into a swirling vortex of chaos. The apprentice was trapped, floating on a tabletop, watching his world drown in his own foolishness. Just when he thought all was lost, when the water was lapping at the ceiling, the main door burst open. There stood the sorcerer, his eyes flashing with thunderous anger. He took one look at the pandemonium, the army of brooms, the flooded room, his terrified apprentice, and, with a single, powerful word and a sweep of his hand, the magic stopped. The brooms clattered to the floor, lifeless once more. The water receded in a great whoosh, leaving everything damp and in disarray. Silence fell, broken only by the dripping of water and the apprentice's panicked breathing. He had never felt so small, so foolish. The sorcerer didn't shout. His voice was quiet, but it carried more weight than any storm. He looked at the trembling boy and explained the lesson he had tried to teach him from the start. "You see now," he said, "power without knowledge, without discipline, without respect for its consequences, leads only to disaster." He explained that the apprentice's desire to take a shortcut had created a catastrophe that he could uncontrol. He hadn't been ready. The master then spent the rest of the day, not just scolding, but teaching. He showed the boy the counterspell, explaining the balance of every incantation. It was a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. And so, the story of the Sorcerer's Apprentice leaves us with a timeless moral. It's a powerful reminder that true skill, whether in magic or in life, doesn't come from shortcuts or a thirst for power. It's earned through patience, hard work, and humility. It's about learning step by step, respecting the process, and understanding the responsibility that comes with knowledge. The apprentice learned that day that the real magic wasn't just in casting the spell. It was in knowing when, why, and how to use it. A lesson we can all take to heart. Thanks for watching this magical tale with us. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories that make you think. See you next time.